Most people think democracy is the ultimate form of government. The voice of the people, the rule of the majority, the belief that if everyone has a say, we will arrive at justice and truth. But more than 2,000 years ago, one man stood up in the very birthplace of democracy and said it was a dangerous illusion. That man was Socrates. And for daring to question the system, Athens condemned him to death. To understand why Socrates hated democracy, you have to understand Athens itself. 5th century BC Athens was proud, wealthy, and ambitious. It had defeated the mighty Persian Empire. It was a city where art, philosophy, and politics thrived. But beneath that golden image was a dangerous flaw, a deep faith in the collective wisdom of the crowd. For Socrates, this faith was not just naive. It was fatal. He compared democracy to a ship at sea. Imagine, he said, a vessel where the crew decides they don't need a trained captain. Everyone gets to vote on where to sail, how to steer, and when to drop anchor. The result would be chaos. People might cheer for the loudest voice, the one who promises the smoothest waters, but without skill or knowledge, the ship would drift into disaster. For Socrates, Athens was that ship. Its citizens had the power to choose leaders and decide policies, but most of them were uneducated in politics, ethics, or governance. They were swayed by emotion, persuasion, and self-interest, not by reason. Socrates saw how easily the masses could be manipulated. He had watched Athens fall under the spell of charismatic demagogues who promised victories and prosperity but delivered ruin. He saw how public opinion could swing wildly from one extreme to another, rewarding flattery and punishing honesty. The same citizens who had once cheered a leader could turn on him overnight. And for Socrates, the problem wasn't that people were evil. It was that they were uninformed. And uninformed decisions, even if made by the majority, could be catastrophic. The Peloponnesian War was his proof. Athens, led by popular vote, launched a disastrous military expedition to Sicily in 415 BC. It was a decision driven more by pride and ambition than strategy. The result was a massacre, thousands of Athenian soldiers killed, their fleet destroyed, and their empire fatally weakened. And yet the people who had voted for the campaign faced no personal consequence. It was always someone else, soldiers, generals, slaves, who paid the price. To Socrates, this was the central flaw of democracy. It put power in the hands of those least prepared to use it wisely. The majority could act on impulse, guided by short-term desires, without understanding the long-term consequences. In his view, leadership required knowledge, virtue, and self-discipline, qualities rare among the masses. He also feared that democracy would lead to tyranny. At first, this sounds impossible. How could a system built on equality produce a dictator? But Socrates saw a dangerous chain of events. In a democracy, leaders often rise by telling people what they want to hear. Over time, those promises grow unrealistic. When they fail, the public grows angry and divided. Eventually, they turn to a strongman, someone who promises to restore order and protect them from their enemies. This strongman, once in power, strips away freedoms in the name of safety. And democracy collapses into tyranny. For Socrates, truth and justice were not determined by counting votes. They were found through reason, dialogue, and the pursuit of wisdom. The crowd could be wrong, and often was. But the problem was, the crowd rarely admitted it. And that made correcting mistakes almost impossible. Socrates believed that only those who understood justice, virtue, and the good of the whole should be allowed to lead. This wasn't elitism for its own sake. It was the same logic we use when trusting a pilot to fly a plane, or a surgeon to perform an operation. We don't choose them by popular vote. We choose them based on skill. So why should we treat the governance of an entire state with less care than the steering of a single ship? But Athens did not take kindly to this criticism. To challenge democracy was to challenge the identity of the city itself. Socrates became a target. In 399 BC, he was put on trial, accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. But beneath the charges was a deeper crime. He had made people question whether the system they worshipped was truly wise. And for that, The jury voted to execute him. His death was a warning. Socrates had predicted that democracy, unchecked, would destroy itself. He believed that without education, self-control, and moral guidance, the voice of the people could become the roar of a mob. And history would show, time and again, that he was right. Look at the world today. The same patterns repeat. Populations swayed by viral slogans instead of careful reasoning. Leaders chosen for their charisma rather than their competence. Votes cast in anger or fear, without thought for what comes next. We live in an age where the loudest voices often drown out the wisest, where truth competes with entertainment, and where democracy is both celebrated and sabotaged by the very people it serves. Socrates' warning is not a call to abandon democracy. It is a call to protect it by making it wiser. By ensuring that citizens are educated, that leaders are chosen for their integrity and knowledge, and that truth is valued over popularity. Because without those safeguards, democracy can become the very thing it was meant to prevent. 2,000 years later, the question Socrates asked still hangs in the air. Who should rule, the many or the wise? And in a world where the lines between truth and falsehood grow thinner every day, are we any closer to answering it?